What is Structured Query Language, SQL? Structured Query Language, SQL, is a standardized programming language that is used to manage relational databases and perform various operations on the data in them. Initially created in the 1970s, SQL is regularly used not only by database administrators but also by developers writing data integration scripts and data analysts looking to set up and run analytical queries. SQL is used for the following: modifying database table and index structures, adding, updating and deleting rows of data, and retrieving subsets of information from within relational database management systems. This information can be used for transaction processing, analytics applications and other applications that require communicating with a relational database. SQL queries and other operations take the form of commands written as statements and are aggregated into programs that enable users to add, modify or retrieve data from database tables. A table is the most basic unit of a database and consists of rows and columns of data. A single table holds records, and each record is stored in a row of the table. Tables are the most used type of database objects or structures that hold or reference data in a relational database. Other types of database objects include the following. Views are logical representations of data assembled from one or more database tables. Indexes are lookup tables that help speed up database lookup functions. Reports consist of data retrieved from one or more tables, usually a subset of that data that is selected based on search criteria. Each column in a table corresponds to a category of data, for example, customer name or address, while each row contains a data value for the intersecting column. Relational databases are relational because they are composed of tables that relate to each other. For example, a SQL database used for customer service can have one table for customer names and addresses, and other tables that hold information about specific purchases, product codes and customer contacts. A table used to track customer contacts usually uses a unique customer identifier called a key or primary key to reference the customer's record in a separate table used to store customer data, such as name and contact information. SQL became the de facto standard programming language for relational databases after they emerged in the late 1970s and early 1980s. SQL standard and proprietary extensions. An official SQL standard was adopted by the American National Standards Institute (ANSI) in 1986, with the International Organization for Standardization (ISO) adopting the standard in 1987. New versions of the SQL standard are published every few years, the most recent in 2016. ISO IEC 9.0.7.5 is the ISO SQL standard developed jointly by ISO and the International Electrotechnical Commission. The standard way of referring to an ISO standard version is to use the standards organizations, ISO IEC, followed by the ISO standard number, a colon and the publication year. The current ISO standard for SQL is ISO IEC 9.0.75 2016. Both proprietary and open source RDBM sets built around SQL are available for use by organizations. SQL-compliant database server products include the following: Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle Database, IBM DB2, SAP HANA, SAP Adaptive Server, Oracle MySQL, open source PostgreSQL. Some versions of SQL include proprietary extensions to the standard language for procedural programming and other functions. For example, Microsoft offers a set of extensions called Transact SQL, while Oracle's extended version of the standard is procedural language for SQL. Commercial vendors offer proprietary extensions to differentiate their product offerings by giving customers additional features and functions. As a result, the different variants of extended SQL offered by vendors are not fully compatible with one another. SQL commands and syntax. SQL is, fundamentally, a programming language designed for accessing, modifying and extracting information from relational databases. As a programming language, SQL has commands and a syntax for issuing those commands. SQL commands are divided into several different types, including the following. Data definition language, DDL, commands are also called data definition commands because they are used to define data tables. Data manipulation language, DML, commands are used to manipulate data in existing tables by adding, changing or removing data. Unlike DDL commands that define how data is stored, DML commands operate in the tables defined with DDL commands. Data query language consists of just one command, select, used to get specific data from tables. This command is sometimes grouped with the DML commands. Data control language commands are used to grant or revoke user access privileges. Transaction control language commands are used to change the state of some data. For example, to commit transaction changes or to roll back transaction changes. SQL on Hadoop tools. SQL on Hadoop query engines are a newer offshoot of SQL that enable organizations with big data architectures built around Hadoop data stores to use SQL as a querying language and enable database professionals to use a familiar query language instead of having to use more complex and less familiar languages, in particular, the MapReduce programming environment for developing batch processing applications. More than a dozen SQL on Hadoop tools are available from Hadoop distribution providers and other vendors. Many of them are open source software or commercial versions. In addition, the Apache Spark processing engine, which is often used in conjunction with Hadoop, includes a Spark SQL module that similarly supports SQL-based programming. Not all SQL on Hadoop tools support all of the functionality offered in relational implementations of SQL. But SQL on Hadoop tools are a regular component of Hadoop deployments. As companies look to get developers and data analysts with SQL skills involved in programming big data applications. SQL security. SQL servers are subject to most of the same vulnerabilities as any other enterprise application, including weak authentication, insecure design, misconfiguration and other application security issues. However, SQL injection, first reported in 1998, continues to dominate security issues for SQL systems. SQL injection attacks usually exploit weaknesses in systems where data submissions are not scanned and sanitized to remove potentially malicious code incorporated or injected into data. SQL skills and related careers. SQL skills can boost many careers, not just those of database administrators, data warehouse architects, database programmers and others whose roles directly use SQL. Some other roles that can benefit from SQL experience include the following. Data scientists working with thousands of tables spread across thousands of databases need strong SQL skills. Business intelligence analysts also must have strong SQL skills for working with data warehouses and structured databases. Data analysts are expected to have experience with SQL. Cloud engineers are expected to be proficient in SQL. SQL skills can be helpful in a surprisingly broad range of disciplines. For example, journalists who reported in 2013 on offshore tax dodgers and money laundering had to learn SQL to help them understand the significance of the millions of emails and files that were leaked. Alright. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel for more videos.